Welcome to the League of Women Voters Texas Zoom webinar on Candidate Forum Basics. And I am Meg Scott Johnson. I am sitting in my den in Kerrville, and I am Vice President on the state board and in charge of services to local leagues, which covers quite the territory, including trainings and including local leagues and leagues at large. And because we know that in 2 days, February 15, is the filing deadline for local elections, at the state board meeting 10 days ago, we put together quickly this training on candidate forums. So let me introduce you to Janice Richardson, and she will give some of the techie information to us.
So hi everybody, I'm Janice Richardson. I'm in Hallettsville, Texas in Lavaca County. So we are trying out Zoom webinar technology today. We've had Zoom meetings for League of Women Voters of Texas for a little bit, but Zoom webinar is a step up, and it's doing some different things. I think we've got the handle on that now, but so thanks for the patience in the beginning. Meanwhile, because we were chatting with you, you have figured out that we have a chat box over on the side. If you don't have a chat box, if you look at a bar at the bottom, it should probably be at the bottom of your screen. You may have to take your mouse cursor down there and point to get it to open up if you don't see it. But there's a chat option that you can hit, and it will open up a screen to the right. You are all, I believe, muted at the moment. If you want to talk, I have a magic panel that by each of your names, there's an option allow to talk. So if you want to have a comment later on, let's just see how this works. We'll play this by ear, and just let me know you have a comment or question, and we'll call on you and give you that magic power. Meanwhile, we are recording this, and this recording will be posted on the League of Women Voters Texas website just as soon as we can get it up after this webinar. One other little techie thing, if you look at the top, you will see, I believe you will see, unless your options are different than mine, there's different ways you can adjust your views. There's a gallery view, which has the panelists across the top and a big screen with the main panelist. And then there's a speaker view, which will have all three of them sort of equal size with whoever's speaking outlined. Mine is in a kind of a green yellow. So you can adjust however you want to look at things. And I think that's it. So back to you, Meg.
Okay. One thing that I want all of us to hold through any type of candidate forum is nonpartisan, to be nonpartisan, because the league is nonpartisan on all levels. We do not support any particular candidate or party. And as we talk about how to do basic candidate forums, I want you to notice how we are aiming the energy of the forum from the candidates out, their information from the candidates out to the citizens. And we will be saying more about that. So let me introduce you to Janice Zittelman.
Thank you. I'm another member of League of Women Voters Hill Country and have served as Voter Services Chair and President. And I would like to direct you as one of your main sources of information to a guide to candidate forums. And the way to find it, if you aren't aware, is to go to the LWV Texas website then on the left-hand side, you will see a bunch of titles. You want to go to 4 league members. After you've clicked on that, click on publications, and then over to the right under the word forums is a guide to candidate forums. And I'm going to kind of go through the guide today, not in detail, but hit some highlights. Meg and I will take turns. And I want to talk first about planning the forum. And I may go a little bit different order than they choose to do here. As Meg mentioned, the filing deadline is February 15th, this Friday. So after February 15th, it would be good, if you're thinking about a forum, to contact the entity. If it's a city council, go to the city website, look for the city secretary's email that person and tell them that you're representing the league, looking at planning a forum, and you need contact information, especially emails and phone numbers. Sometimes you won't get both of those, but you need some kind of contact information for the candidates. Also, to know if it's a contested race. Sometimes you will find that it is not a contested race, so you would not hold a forum. If it's a school board, basic thing, once again, go to the website for the school district, and usually there will be a contact person, or at least you'll have a phone number for the school district administrative office to call and once again explain why you need the candidate information. So you have contested races. The next thing you want is to look at setting a date and finding a place. You kind of have to work those two things simultaneously. With the date, you want to consider, would you be better off in the night, or you want to do a Saturday so you have daytime, depending on the audience you're trying to get. Look around at your community calendars and try not to compete with other big events if possible. You especially do not want to compete with city council meetings or school board meetings, and also consult your Chamber of Commerce calendar. And for the place, you just want something that would not seem to exclude a potential audience. Country club might not be a great idea. Usually there's community centers. And then you also want to take into consideration your settings for electronics and that kind of thing. You can consider working with a co-sponsor, but you want to make sure once again that it will remain nonpartisan. There's a lot of detail in this guide about information about funding your forums and those kinds of things. Under considering the format and the timing, basically there's 2 types of formats. There's the standard format where the candidates are seated at the front of the room and take turns answering questions, or there's the speed dating format. When I told you about finding this document on the State League's website, right under this document, there is a toolkit for speed dating forums. So that's an option for you. It says decide how to ask questions on page 5, and it talks about oral questions. We do not recommend oral questions or open mics. It's just not a good idea. You lose control when you do that. The best way is to have the audience write down questions and those are then screened and then given to your moderator. Additionally, it's a good idea for the league to have some questions. Sometimes it takes a little while for the audience to get started with their questions. Or you want to fill in some time toward the end, questions that haven't been asked, you would have questions that the league members have prepared ahead of time. With the written questions, they have to be a question that can be asked to each candidate. For example, you can't say to an incumbent, well, I don't like the way you voted on such and such issue. How would you vote on this issue? It would have to be worded something more like, in the past, council has voted to do this. What do you think you might, how do you think you might vote if this issue came up again or something? But it has to be a question that everyone can answer. And there's guidelines about those written questions. The reason you have screeners is they can take out any questions that are not appropriate, and they can also combine duplicate questions. After the screeners have reviewed them, they generally hand them off to the moderator. I know this is kind of jumping into the actual event, but that's just information about questions. There's also some information about taping or televising the event. If that's done, it needs to be done in the entirety. Cannot just tape little pieces here and there. In Hill Country, we've had an a videographer who he feels it's a public responsibility, and he will tape these for free, and then they are posted to our LWV website. Sometimes I think in the past a television station has been involved. Once again, if you have a local television station, they need to tape it in its entirety. And it has to be able to be viewed in its entirety. You should be aware of Texas Open Meetings Act. So you would be, as an example, with the city council race, if the city secretary will know if the Open Meetings Act would be applicable for this event, and they will need to post it as such. I think that you're aware that you need to have at least 2 candidates for an office in order to have an event. We, at the last minute in one of our forums, it was a runoff election, so there were only 2 candidates, and at the last minute, we learned that one of them had chosen not to appear. And the president got up and said to the audience, "I'm so sorry, but we've just been notified this candidate won't be here, so we will not be holding a forum." After that, if they want to take time to visit with the candidate who's present, they can do so on their own. We talked about question screeners. The other very important people that you need, kind of called forum officials, are the moderator. That's going to be the person that asks the question, keeps that in order. A timekeeper, that's another very important job. We have gone to using an iPad. The timekeeper sits right in the front row with their iPad so that the candidates can see it. And that was a little bit more useful than holding up the little numbers. And the other thing that's important, You want people that will be collecting questions throughout the event. We also want you to have a greeter, probably a table at the entrance to your venue, who will check in the candidates, make sure that the signed agreements are done, and that kind of thing. Talks about publicity. It talks about printing programs. We've never had programs in my history with Hill Country. I don't think they're particularly useful. And I want to talk about a little bit, stepping backwards. You've gotten the candidates' information. You have a candidate agreement form that goes with the invitation. My suggestion is that you call the candidates, tell them that you're planning the forum, give them the date, place, and time, and let them know that they will be getting this candidate agreement. And Janice, can you put that up?
Yes.
There is a sample on the state website. It's part of this guide, and it's in the back of the book. But League of Women Voters Hill Country has added a few things to it. And so this is going to be, I believe, Janice Richardson, this will be posted with the recording?
Yes.
Okay. So this sample will be there for you to use. It goes into detail about how the forum will work. Now, if you do choose to do the speed dating forum, you would need one that's a little bit different. And I would say, if you need help with that, I'm going to say contact Meg Johnson, and we will get that to you.
Yes.
Services to local leagues.
Yes.
So this gives the candidates information about what to expect at the forum, and on the very last page, they will sign an agreement that they agree with this, and they will need to return that. Hopefully you get that back before the forum, but if you don't, you get it signed when they come in. Other things to do are, and I'm going to go back to kind of what you do. Visit the forum site ahead of time so you can plan where tables will be, where chairs will be, that kind of thing. And one thing that's important, the date of the forum before the room starts getting crowded, make sure that you put a little sign on a chair where the timekeeper is going to sit. So all of a sudden you go, oh my goodness, we need a timekeeper, and where are they going to sit? Make sure that you've got that in position. And of course, you're going to have water bottles, nameplates, and a tablet for them to write on. One thing that we learned, and I think that it's been added to this agreement, is that the candidates are not to bring in written information or electronic devices. Unfortunately, we learned after a forum that one of our candidates had been using cheat notes. Live and learn. So now we know to have people watching for those kinds of things who can signal to the moderator that we need to stop and just remind everyone that's not to be done. Meg, I believe now, is going to talk about running the forum. And
I am. And if there is going to be a video, we have, when I say we at this moment, League of Women Voters Hill Country, because this is where I am also a member, we have a video agreement, and we can post that also, because Janice Richardson has that and knows how to do that.
I'll share it right now. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
That, Meg, as I recall, that video agreement was approved by state before we used it.
That's true. And I'm sure our governance person, Connie, who's listening in, will make a note of that for me, and ta-da, it will happen. Let me say that we're talking here about the traditional candidate forum. And I need to exit full screen so I can see my notes. Moderating the forum is key. So often the president, who's the spokesperson for the league, with her leadership team or his leadership team, will choose a moderator who's other than the president, but someone with poise and a good speaking voice who can eyeball those candidates, and you are running the show. And that leaves the president or the president's designee to start the forum. And actually, let me say, before the forum begins, the moderator and the overseer, who probably would be the president, will meet together and decide who's going to do. If there are two candidates, there's a coin toss. If there are 5 candidates, you have 5 pieces of paper, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, folded in a basket, and the candidates reach up and take out a number, and that sets the number in which they will be seated and start their questioning. So you decide who's going to hold the basket. The league member who's overseeing the forum will first address the audience and the candidates, welcoming them, giving the league purpose, stating nonpartisan policy, saying to turn off the cell phones, and saying there will be no recordings, that the only recordings are by the media and they are to record in full. And of course, you tell them where the exits are in the bathrooms. Let me say about the media, it is really useful to have positive working relationship with your local media. We in the Hill Country work to do that. We even invite them to come as our guests at Women's Equality Day. We let them know way ahead of time about the forums. We want them to, when they come to the forum, to come in and let us know that they're there. So we want a positive working relationship with media. It really helps. So the person who is the overseer in the welcoming gives the instructions that the citizens take their 3x5 or 4x6 cards and their pencil or pen, write out their questions, hold it up or pass it, because there are league members in each aisle who are the runners who pick up those questions, take them over to the screener table where there should be 2 league members to screen, edit those questions, and then a runner from the screener's table up to the moderator. All of that is explained. So doesn't feel like any hocus pocus. It's people understand what's going on. The moderator, before the forum starts, if there are more than 2 candidates, it's best to make a chart, because if you have 3 candidates to 5 candidates to whatever up there at one time, you need a chart. Like, let's say there are 5 candidates. So you write on your piece of paper 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 2, 3, 4, 5, then so that you can know who starts on the next question, and then mark that out when you have finished that round. Because when you're up there and you're focused on the candidates and you're receiving questions and you're deciding which order to ask the questions in, it's pretty easy to forget who's next to start the questions. I hope that makes sense.
Meg?
Yes.
There's a question that's come in. It's about the cheat sheet idea. So this is not to take you back too much, but why is it bad to have let the candidates have a cheat sheet?
Okay. Good question. What we experienced here is that there was a candidate after the name tents were in place, and we had their pad of paper and their pen and their bottle of water up there. That person pulled out his notes, and he had seated the audience with friends who were writing questions that specifically went to his responses. And the other candidates, as in all other forums we want them to speak extemporaneously from who they are, what they know, what they say they're going to do. And it's an unfair advantage if somebody has their prepared comments and others are speaking off the cuff, so to speak. So we do want to know, can a candidate speak well to the public? How knowledgeable are they? So we want everybody to kind of have an equal playing field. Does that make sense? Okay. The good question. Let's see. I think also you would put that the overseer would say ahead of time that after the forum is over, the candidates will be available for meet and greet. The moderator dresses professionally, maintains decorum through the event, ensures that the questions are posed to the candidates in a way that is not biased or is partisan in any nature. It's best for the moderator to call the candidates by their names and not their titles. So, yeah, just it evens the playing field there. If you stay in the moderator stays in charge of the forum. If a candidate is unruly or disrespectful, you stop it right there. I have had that happen. Here, it was actually in a sheriff's candidate forum where we had the existing sheriff in office and a candidate who was opposing. And in the opening statement, the one who was running against the sheriff in office said, well, the problem in this county is, and pointed over to the sheriff. And I stopped him in his tracks. I will say the media had already caught that, but I stopped him in his tracks and I said, no, you speak about yourself. I will tell you, by the end of that candidates forum, when I was asking questions, he was saying, yes, ma'am, to me. And I was glad. we also have had a situation here in Hill Country, and I was president and not moderator, so I was roaming the room, so to speak, or standing at the back watching the whole scene. And there had been a tragic bicycle accident like the night before, and this was, I think, Commissioner's Court Candidates Forum, and a man just popped up quickly and started yelling at the commissioners about whatever, signage or whatever, and I whipped around and got to him and said, "Stop." And then my husband, who's a league member, came up to the gentleman and said, "You're out of order," and took him outside. So you just have to be ready to maintain order. We are volunteers, and if you make a mistake, you just smile, acknowledge it, correct it, and keep on going. What else is there to say about this? Janice Zittelman, what else? What have I left out?
Well, not left out, but an additional tool that is from the Minnesota League of Women Voters that's going to be posted with this. Also, it's called Tips and Techniques for Moderators, Expect the Unexpected. It goes into some of the things that you've just spoken about and maybe a few other little things that might happen to, so that if you are aware these can happen, you're better prepared to deal with them.
It's true. It's true. So as it wraps up, the moderator thanks the candidates, thanks the audience, thanks the league members. If there were other volunteers, if you were co-sponsoring this with the Chamber of Commerce or AAUW or something, you thank all those people. This is after the candidates have given their closing statements. Then you do your thank yous. Then the candidates can come down and go meet and greet. I will say that we have in the hallway outside the room where the forum is, we have tables for candidates to put their campaign material. They are not to wear campaign buttons or shirts. Nobody wears any campaign anything in the forum room. If somebody shows up with a campaign t-shirt on, we just say, "Oh, okay, go in the restroom and turn your t-shirt inside out." So you can see how we keep this very nonpartisan and perception of information flowing from the individual candidates to the citizens. And we are not having any way of looking like we are supporting one over another. Let me start a new paragraph here. If you had a candidate responding to another candidate, candidates responding to each other, that is called a debate. I think you lose some control there because they're responding to each other, and we want the information going about themselves out to the citizens. So I'm an advocate of candidate forums and not debates. As you know, there are no empty chairs and there are no stand-ins. We can get more complex, but for these May elections, they're not going to be state or national. So FEC, Federal Election Commission rules do not particularly apply, but you certainly can use those rules because they're good rules. I will say that if you had a lot of candidates, if for some reason you had, I don't know, several candidates running for several offices, and it was going to be unwieldy to try to do a candidates forum, and you didn't want to do 2 or 3 of them, because that's really unwieldy in terms of time and energy. You would have a candidate's fair. Here's the visual on a candidate's fair. You use the high school cafeteria, and candidates are at their individual tables with their information, and the public is invited, and the public moves from table to table in whatever order they want to meet and greet the candidates. That's a candidate's fair. And the candidate's agreement would be written for that. The speed dating style is different in that you have a large enough venue where there are tables where the citizens sit 6 or 8 to a table with one chair at that table with a balloon on it or a number, and the candidates move from table to table. So, and that information is in the speed dating style candidates forum. Afterwards, it's the president of the league or whoever is designated writes thank you notes, handwritten thank you notes to the candidates. And what I've done is email to all the volunteers, thanking them, letting them know, oh, you do have somebody count how many people are there. And you do the thanks and praise and appreciations. Janice Zittelman, what else?
I'm going to mention a couple of things and then we can respond to some other suggestions. These are just small. You will notice that in the website document example, it tells the candidates they'll have 3 minutes for opening and closing. It depends on how many candidates that you have. If you have 5 to 8 candidates, you don't want to give them each 3 minutes or you won't have time for questions. You can make it as short as 1 minute for opening and closing.
Right.
And here's just a little detail we need to put in that document somewhere, that somebody from the league needs to count who's there. How many people are there? How many candidates? How many reporters? How many league members? And how many audience members? Because at some point, the league's going to want you to report on that. Somebody that's listening in said, this seems kind of scary. It's a little intimidating, but what we have found is the candidates are glad for this opportunity. The audience is glad for this opportunity. And a great majority of the time, there is no dissension or problems. It's something that we are doing for the community, and the community is grateful. Yes. So but we want to give you some tools, so if the unexpected happens, hopefully you'll know how to deal with it. And a lot of it is just saying, stop, you're out of order, that kind of thing. And typically people will stop. I don't know if it was said you should plan ahead as to when you're going to end the forum, what time. If you haven't had an opportunity to go through all the questions, you just say, we planned that this forum would not last longer than 90 minutes, and so we are going to be stopping it now. You'll have an opportunity to address this on an individual basis with the candidates or something like that. It's important that you track the invitations to the candidates. Every candidate has to be invited, and you need the proof that you invited. That's why I recommend that you make a phone call before you send the invitation. If you give them a deadline in the invitation as to when you would like a response, if you don't get that response, you make another phone call or email attempt, and you should document those attempts. You would want, with the greeting table, to have information about the league. It's an opportunity to do a little fundraising for the league and remind people. Also, lots of times at the readers table, we have information about voting dates, places, that kind of thing. And if we have especially we want to remind people about Vote 411. As we mentioned, the venue, you want to consider the venue. It definitely needs to be accessible, especially for disabilities. We have never gotten into having a translator for hearing impaired, and I don't know the requirements on it. I think that's all I can think of right now. I'm sure, Meg, that you thought of some other things too.
I think you're covering it. Obviously, you publicize it through all the ways you can, from print media to social media to your website. That's why that good working relationship with your newspapers is just essential. And they really like, around here, they prefer the League Candidates forums. And I will tell you that over the last 3 years, the Chamber of Commerce and one of the major political parties here has now adopted our format and ways of doing things, rather than having the open mic, which is where you lose control fairly quickly. If there are other questions, chat them in.
And I think there's an option for people to raise their hands too. We don't have that option as the panelist, but I see something that suggests you do. So I'll be watching for that. If you want to raise your hand, and then I can call on you. You can ask the question directly or make a comment. And if you have your hand raised and I'm not seeing it, chat at me in chat and let me know. So we're figuring this out.
I will say, while we're waiting to see if there are other questions coming in, that we hope to have a little follow-up evaluation piece to you all, because we need and want your feedback. And in that will be a request for any training ideas that you have that would be useful for your league and really all leagues in our state. The next training that we have set up will be Tuesday, April 2nd at noon, and it will be about annual meetings. All you need to know about annual meetings and more, including the conflict of interest statement. Services to local leagues is excited about the league energy in our state, about our diversity, and we have leagues popping up all over the place now. We now have a league at large in Brazoria County. We may have one coming online in Cook County. If you know of people interested in the league that do not live in or near a league, have them find the state office, and they can find me, and we can get them information about starting a league. In fact, it's right on the website. It says start a league. So I want to thank my two Janices, Janice Zittelman, my buddy in Hill Country, and the forums we have done, and the stories we have to share. We're glad to share that with you. And Janice Richardson in Lavaca County. And Lavaca County, drum roll, is now on its way to becoming a league of its own, so to speak. League of Women Voters US will grant league status to Lavaca County, and they will no longer be a league at large, they will be a league.
So Meg,
yes.
Thanks for that shout out, but we have another question that's come in.
Okay.
So you were heading toward the finish line, but here we are.
Okay.
This is about the Candidates Fair, which, by the way, our league here in Lavaca County had one of those last year for our local school board and city council. It was so well received. I love that idea. But the question is, what is a good amount of time to allow? So how long do these things go on?
Okay, two Janices. How long have candidate fairs gone on? At
2
least
hours.
2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours. And the ones recently in this part of the world were on Saturdays, and they were at high school cafeterias.
One thing that I felt was useful was that we provided some sample questions and also some information about the office that the candidate was running for. So they didn't kind of just wander around and go, nice to meet you, but they actually had a question to ask. How do you, what's your position on this, or something like that.
We may need to post that booklet, because it really was a booklet, because we were covering Bandera County, Kirk County, and Gillespie County, because it's Hill Country League, and it was a very useful booklet. We may need to get that to voter services so they can have some information about candidates fairs and that example. Janice Richardson, is there more?
I think that's all the questions. Is there any more? We have a few more minutes, and so we have time. So someone commented that the booklet would be really useful, and so incredibly useful. So let's definitely do that. We'll get that up there.
Okay.
And I want to just mention on that booklet, those questions, I got those off of other league websites. I'm a very good person at finding something someone else has done and using it rather than reinventing the wheel.
Good.
And I will say for us, last year doing our, we did a candidates forum. We did this candidates fair using a speed dating format. And for us as first timers, there was planning, but it wasn't really intimidating. And the candidates, who we had more contested elections locally than we have had historically. So there were a lot of first-time people running for office, and they didn't find it intimidating at all. We had 100% participation of everybody that was running for local office in opposed positions, and folks just love it. In fact, one of our challenges was we were in a fellowship hall of a church around tables, and with candidates moving from table to table, and there was so much conversation. It was kind of a roar in the room. So we'll think about acoustics next time, because there was so much good chat.
Yes, and let me say, in terms of a candidate fair, you don't need timers. In terms of the speed dating, you do need a timer, and we learned in our first one that timer cannot then say something by voice, so you need a bell.
Yes,
right. Because there's so many voices going, you need a bell to mark that the candidates to get up and go to the next table. You also have league members there to help candidates find the next table, like going from table 2 to table 3.
Yeah, numbers prominently displayed on the tables.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are fun. They are fun.
Yeah.
So I want you all to find your candidates, find the type of fair or forum that would work for the number of candidates and your citizens, and do this and enjoy it. It's good league being league.
The only other thing, as a kind of a newcomer, it's really helpful if league members wear red, white, and blue, so you can pick them out of the crowd and know who's going to be helping that day.
That is true. That is really true.
let me see. So here is another comment. We found that incumbents often decline to participate in our forums because that prevents their opportunity from participating. What suggestions do you have for increasing participation in two candidates race? So when the incumbents don't want to, they think, I guess the assumption is that they are already known and have a foot up.
I would say persist and have your forum and say clearly at the beginning, as you did in your media publicity, all candidates for these races have been invited to participate. You make it very clear, all are welcome at the table. All the candidates have been invited to participate. So you just say that, let it be, and then have a very good forum with the candidates that are there, not a debate, but the candidates giving their responses to the citizens, have the media responding, taking notes and writing their articles about it. And I would hope over a couple of cycles that it would get around that it's useful to be there to share with the citizens who you are and what you think.
Meg, if it's only a 2-candidate race and one of them chooses not to show, you can't do that. I wonder if last minute you could make it a fair, maybe?
That, well,
kind of.
Yes, if you know ahead of time, if there are other races, but if there are only 2 running for one office and one says they're not going to do it, then you cannot have just one candidate.
Right.
So if there's school, like for the May elections, if there's school board elections and city elections, and you think you're going to have some difficulties, like people are saying, well, I'm not going to come and participate in your candidates forum, shift it into a speed dating style or have a candidates fair.
Well, and Carol Owen is reminding us that on page 8 of the Guide to Candidate Forums, it addresses this question.
Thank you, Carol.
So here's a question from me, Meg and Janice. What about clearing the dates with candidates? Do you set the dates and then contact them, or do you offer date options?
That's one of the toughest. Herding candidates is like herding cats. That's the hardest part of this whole process, is that beginning time. So when you have checked your Chamber of Commerce calendar, your school calendars, your city calendars, and you know to stay off of Wednesday nights because that's church and choir, and you don't want a Monday and you don't want a Friday, so you're limited to Tuesdays and Thursdays or Saturday mornings. I think it depends on how many candidates you have, and if you can let them know way ahead of time. This is why we're having this today, is because next week you have to start planning this thing to get the date and the time. So it would just so depend on what your particulars are to say, can you do a Tuesday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. or can you do Thursday from noon to 1:30 on these dates, and see what you can find. But you also have to be able to find places. So this is the hardest part. Janice Ittleman, what do you say?
Yeah, if you, the other thing is the venue. Will you have a venue for that time? If you can come contact your venue and you may have a few options, then you could go to the candidates and ask them. I'm not against that at all. But another reason that you want to do this early, because in the local races, there's not so many things close to the date of the election, but it's still good to do it early. If you can, then they're less likely to have other events, I think.
Yes, because then you get your publicity out there sooner.
Well, I think we're right at 1 o'clock, Meg. So, and I just threw that kind of wild card question in at the end there, but I think I'm not seeing anything else coming in now.
Okay. I want to thank each Janice. I want to thank all the participants. Share this information. It will be on the website. In League, go forth. Thank you. Bye.